The old wooden box. I work for a construction company, and a few days ago we were hired by a priest to do some renovations on an old church. While we were tearing down a wall, we found a small recess behind it. It was in a tiny room that had no entrance, as if it had been sealed off from the rest of the building. Inside there was a long black wooden box. The box was about 2 meters long and very old. The wood was damp and rotten. There was something written on the side, but it was too worn and faded to make out. The box was nailed tightly shut, and there didn't seem to be any way of opening it. When I showed it to my boss, he told me to notify the priest and ask him what he wanted done with it. When I managed to get the priest on the phone and describe the box to him, he became silent for a long time. Then he told me he would come by in the morning and deal with it. In the meantime, he asked me to leave it somewhere safe. I carried the box into the church and left it in the corner. I figured it would be safe overnight, since the church was not in use. By that time, it was almost evening, so I packed up my things and I went home. The next day, when I arrived from work, my boss came running over to me. "About that box you found," he said. "There's a problem. Last night, 2 of the night watchmen came across it, and you're not going to believe this, but the morons went and opened the box." I hurried into the church and found the 2 night watchmen sitting on the ground and my coworkers standing around them. I suddenly had a very bad feeling in my stomach. Beside them, the wooden box lay open. The priest was standing there, shaking his head. "I warned you," he said. "I warned you not to open it. It's too soon." "What's wrong with them?" I asked, pointing at the night watchman. "They haven't said a word since we got here," said my boss. "It's like they can't even hear us." "You should bring them to the hospital," said the priest, although it's probably already too late. Then I walked over and peered into the wooden box. I was shocked to see that it contained a body. It was the mummified remains of what looked to be some kind of human. However, it was unlike any human being I had ever laid eyes on. The strange thing had 2 heads. Both faces were hideously deformed. Even stranger, it had 4 arms, 2 left arms and 2 right arms. It was the most baffling mutation I had ever seen. Whatever it was, it really looked terrifying. I could see that my coworkers were very distraught. To calm them down, the priest went around the church, clutching his rosary beads, sprinkling holy water on everything, and reciting something in Latin. The night watchmen were taken to the hospital, and we debated whether we should call the police. The priest loaded the wooden box in the trunk of his car. Then he stopped and hung his head. He couldn't even look at us in the eye. "I am sorry for all of you," he said sadly. "You don't have long to live." With that, he drove off, and we were left there scratching our heads. In the day that followed, strange things began to happen. We heard that one of the night watchmen had died in the hospital. He had a heart attack, even though he was only in his early 30s. The other was transferred to a mental institution. 3 of my coworkers came down with a mysterious illness and had to be hospitalized. That evening, as I was leaving work, I tripped on some rubble and tore a ligament in my leg. It meant that I couldn't go to work, and I was forced to recover at home. I had so much time on my hands, and strange thoughts were swirling around in my head. I couldn't get the words of the priest out of my mind. Today I tried calling him several times, and eventually he answered his phone. We talked for over 2 hours, and he told me a lot. Perhaps he told me too much. Conversation went like this. I said, "I have to know, what exactly was that thing?" He told me. He died many years ago. At one time, he was a human being. Or should I say 2 human beings, 2 deformed children. They came from a small village in the south, but their parents were extremely poor, and they ended up selling them to a slave dealer. Somehow they ended up being put on display in a traveling freak show that toured the country. I asked him, "So I don't understand. If they were two people, how did they become one person? Do you mean they were Siamese twins?" He replied, "Are you sure you want me to tell you about this?" "Yes, I really want to know," I said. "Good, okay. I wasn't going to tell you anything, but what harm can it do? No, they were not Siamese twins. They were not born that way. However, they did have severely deformed faces. You'll have to forgive me for not saying the name of the cult aloud, but it has to do with the dark occult. Their leader was a man by the name of Manano Teoko. He went to the freak show and paid a large amount of money for the specimens. He bought the twins, you see, for his collection." I said, "What did he want for them?" He told me there is a legend about a certain occult ritual. It states that it is possible for someone to create a very powerful curse. They say if you put two poisonous insects in a jar, they will fight to the death, and you can use the one that survives to make the curse more potent. Something about combining the live one with the dead one. Well, the cult leader used that method on human beings, taking that little story about the curse as inspiration. The cult leader decided to try it with people. He conducted his terrible experiments in a hidden room in the basement. He left the twins there alone in that room without food or water. I asked him how long were they locked in that room. He said long enough for one to eventually kill and cannibalize the other. Quite some time, I imagine. I said I would rather not imagine such things. He said, but the cruelty didn't end there. The last one left alive in that room was taken out, and the cult leader set about combining him with the dead brother. He had no pity for them. He didn't even see them as human beings. For him, they were just a tool, a means to an end. Using crude surgery, he removed the head and arms of the deceased twin and sewed them onto the body of the surviving twin. That is how this thing was created. I said, he created a monstrosity on purpose? The cult leader didn't regard it as that. He was completely enraptured with what he had created. In the time of legends, there was a mystical beast. It was a two-headed, four-armed monster. The cult leader named his creation after that legend. He and his followers worshipped it like an evil deity. They locked it in a room and starved it to death. Then they performed dark occult rituals in honor of it. I see, I said. He said they used it as a cursed talisman, if you will. He believed that he created an unparalleled evil, one that could kill a large number of people, a kind of angel of death, if you will. I asked him who was the target for the curse. He said every living thing in this world, every single person on earth. What? I asked. Was the cult leader crazy or something? He said definitely a possibility. The curse is very powerful. The thing began turning up at the site of natural disasters, whenever there was an earthquake, a flood, or a fire, or a tsunami. In those days leading up to the disaster, the thing was found. The followers of this occult are still alive, still transporting the remains of this thing, causing death and destruction in its wake. You mean every disaster in the last 100 years had been caused by this thing? He said exactly. This is unbelievable. The cult has branches all over the world? He said they do. Their goal is the destruction of every living thing in this world. But this couldn't be true, I said. It's just a coincidence, right? A legend? That the thing has appeared before every disaster that has occurred in the last 100 years? Well, it would have to be a very amazing coincidence. I asked him where it is now. He said somewhere safe, until it is needed again. You are bringing it somewhere else? I asked him. In the future, yes. You're a member of this occult, aren't you? He said, I was wondering if you'd ask me that. You are, aren't you? I said. Are you crazy or something? That's definitely possible, he said. What is going to happen? I asked him. I don't know precisely. The thing determines what happens. We can only watch from afar and revel in the wanton deaths and destruction. Why have you told me so much? I asked him. I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter. You see, you won't be alive much longer anyway. Who would believe you? I said, but how can you do this? It's evil. It's meaningless slaughter. What good does it serve? What could be the point? You're a priest, damn it. Let me leave it at that. Don't call me here again. After he hung up the phone, I began racking my brain trying to figure out what I should do. I couldn't warn anybody. He was right. No one would believe me. I immediately booked a flight out of the country. At least I could try and save my own life. I'm on my way to the airport right now. I hope I can get away this time. I hope it's not too late. If you are watching the news and you see a report of a disaster in the next few days, one that kills a large number of people, then you will know what caused it. Just pray that this thing doesn't turn up in your country.